Nearly 25 years after wolves were reintroduced to central Idaho, they are setting new records for killing livestock. Wolves killed a record number of cattle and sheep in the last 2 years. They also killed farm animals such as horses, goats, and llamas. These were just the confirmed kills. The record number of wolf kills suggests that existing wolf management could be more aggressive to reduce wolf numbers in problem areas, ranchers and landowners say.
The wolf has to be scared of something, and right now they're not really scared of anything.
Whitaker's family runs the Two Dot Ranch in Ledor in the Lemhi River Valley and the Lemhi Mountains. They had 10 confirmed livestock kills by wolves most recently, and 3 years ago they lost 45 calves that just flat disappeared in the mountains and were never confirmed, a loss of about $45,000 or $1,000 each.
That's catastrophic to a rancher to lose something like that. If you're going to run livestock, if you're going to be productive, you can't have these predators preying all the time.
Wolves usually kill prey in the middle of the night. Few people, if anyone, can hear the screams of livestock or farm animals getting killed by wolves. To Whitebird rancher Ray Stowers, who lost 4 calves to wolves last winter, it's quite a shock. The wolves killed 2 steers and 2 heifers on his private winter calving ground high above the Salmon River. Stowers felt like the wolves had the same impact as an LA gang throwing a brick through his family's living room window.
It's a pretty gut-wrenching feeling that you have to live with. And I honestly look at our cows as part of our family. And I treat them well. And I try to tend to their every need. But there is a situation that happens mostly at night there, and you feel totally helpless because you cannot protect them in a country like this. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
And it's just one of them deals where, you just get this knot in your stomach, and every morning when you go around the corner over there where you can first see where your cows are and stuff, you have this knot in your stomach, like, wonder what happened last night. I wonder who got killed.
Wolf populations have spread throughout the state of Idaho north of Interstate 84, and they continue to grow beyond the state's borders into Oregon, Washington, and California. Each dot on the map indicates an active wolf pack. Idaho Fish and Game estimates there are 80 to 100 wolf packs in Idaho minimum, and that roughly translates to at least 800 to 1,000 wolves living in Idaho north of Interstate 84. Since 1995, wolves have killed more than 982 cattle, 3,150 sheep, and 53 guard dogs, causing $1.6 million in damages and impacting 435 ranchers statewide. Smaller numbers of llamas, border collies, horses, goats, and other animals have been killed by wolves as well. Wolves are killing livestock and other animals in 8 counties that have chronic wolf depredation year after year: Lemhi, Custer, Valley, Adams, Boise, Idaho, Elmore, and Washington counties. Ranching is big business in Idaho. There are about 6,000 cow-calf ranching operations, large and small, statewide. Livestock production is the second largest ag industry in Idaho. Cash receipts from the beef cattle industry in Idaho average about $1.7 billion a year. A key issue is figuring out how to manage wolves without causing undue harm to ranchers and the rural Idaho economy, experts say.
The public said that we wanted these apex predators back with the promise that they'd stay in certain areas. Well, they don't know any boundaries, and the economics and apex predators don't mix.
The genie is out of the bottle, and wolves continue to expand in Idaho. The main challenge now is how to manage wolves in ag-wildland areas where the majority of wolves and their prey live today. The story of wolf recovery in Idaho is largely a story about broken promises, unfunded mandates, and challenging wildlife management. Wolves were supposed to stay inside the central Idaho wilderness, but they didn't. Wolves were supposed to be delisted from the Endangered Species Act after 10 breeding pairs recolonized the central Idaho wilderness, but they weren't. Wolf numbers exploded in Idaho and continue to grow as the animals reproduce at a rate of 30 to 40% per year.
The fact of the matter is, there's still more wolves born every spring than what we have ever harvested in any given season.
Wolves are being celebrated in Yellowstone National Park, where people can see them preying on game in the Lamar Valley in the winter. Some people in Idaho enjoy hearing wolves howl in the wild or seeing their tracks. But Idaho has not realized any tourism benefits. There's no reliable place in Idaho where people can go see wolves on the landscape. Wolves were supposed to bring $8.5 million in positive benefits to Idaho, according to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. But so far, the cost of managing wolves and the cost of wolf impacts to ranchers far exceed that, officials say. Cattle ranching has been turned upside down. See Part 4 of our series. Elk hunting has been changed forever, and some hunting outfitters have gone out of business. Even wildlife watching has been affected in wolf country.
Certainly, the existence value of another species on the landscape has a calculated benefit. But I will tell you the amount of sportsmen and state of Idaho resources that have been expended in the management of wolves has got to far exceed that amount. We waited so long to implement management actions, and that this predator so dominated the landscape in a growth scale that they overate the forage base in many areas.
The challenges in hunting alone have been drastic. I mean, the old place you'd take your dad, or your dad takes their son, and you can't go there anymore because the elk are gone, and there's maybe 1 or 2 deer where there used to be hundreds, and they've really pushed the populations of elk and deer around, and also diminished the populations a lot in different areas.
Elk management in Idaho has been challenging after wolves were brought in, Moore says. Wolves have a hearty appetite of eating about 9 pounds of red meat per day. Elk is their primary food source, along with deer and moose.
We were already managing to be sure that our elk herds don't attain unhealthy levels. Did they have some surplus to be used for predation purposes? Certainly. We've had cougars and black bears living on elk and young neonate elk for a lot of years. We threw another predator on there that did not have habitat-specific needs, simply had a forage need. And they exploded on the landscape and upset that balance.
Idaho hunters, like Idaho ranchers, want the Idaho Department of Fish and Game to keep wolf numbers down to a manageable level.
It's been fascinating to see wolves be reintroduced and really dominate wildlife in the state. It's been a struggle and a challenge, and I think a lot of different folks have come together to work on it, but they continue to spread geographically and also grow in numbers, even despite all of the plans that have been put in place to manage them. So still a lot of work to do.
Overall, Moore says hunters' concerns about wolves have gone down since Idaho sportsmen were able to hunt and trap wolves.
We saw this, what I would call hate, disgust, angst, you name the descriptor in there, it went way down. Once sportsmen were able to buy a permit to be able to go out and take a wolf, they were empowered to do their part as managers on the landscape. And it made a large difference in how we were able to move forward.
After wolves were delisted from the Endangered Species Act in 2011, the Idaho Department of Fish and Game launched hunting and trapping seasons to manage wolves as a game species. Idaho has a 3-pronged management system. USDA Wildlife Services responds to reports of wolves killing livestock at Idaho ranches or on public lands and takes control action to remove problem wolves. During the big game hunting season, sportsmen can harvest wolves when they're out hunting deer, elk, and other species. About 30,000 hunters buy wolf tags each year. Harvest averages about 155 wolves per year, a poor success rate with only 0.5% of the hunters actually harvesting a wolf. Wolf trapping seasons are in effect for 7 months, from August 30th to March 31st. Trapping harvest has been averaging about 100 wolves per year. To help soften the blow from direct wolf kills, ranchers can apply to receive compensation for confirmed livestock losses from the Governor's Office of Species Conservation or the Farm Service Agency.
I get a phone call from a landowner. They say, I had your name on the back of my wolf depredation investigation report from Wildlife Services. What do? I say, you have a few forms to fill out. You have an application front page, you have a match, and you have a W-9 so the state can send you a check.
Depending on the year, there may or may not be enough money to compensate ranchers for the full market value of livestock losses, and no one gets compensated for the extra time it takes to work with Wildlife Services on confirming wolf kills. The Wood River Wolf Project works with several sheep ranchers in the Blaine County area to reduce wolf predation with a variety of non-lethal techniques, and Passamaroid cattle rancher Glenn Elzinga also uses non-lethal management. These ranchers like wolves and prefer to try to coexist with them, using various non-lethal tools to protect their livestock. For example, Elzinga was losing $25,000 to $30,000 to wolves and other issues while his cattle were grazing on public lands during the summer months. He and his wife decided to pay their daughters and others to stay with the cattle 24/7 while they're out on public range for 3+ months. The range riders herd up the cattle every night and put them in a solar fence enclosure to protect them from predators.
Since we started this new paradigm, we haven't lost anybody ever to either wolves, larkspur, loss, lightning, or whatever. And it's because if we were going to be with them all the time, we'd be able to kind of look those things in the eye and say, hey, we're not going to have this economic part of death loss anymore.
The Wood River Wolf Project herds up sheep flocks every night, surrounds the animals with flattery, and uses a variety of noisemakers, strobe lights, and other accessories to ward off wolves at night.
You want to make sure that you have a good working knowledge of these different types of tools, kind of know when to use them, and then rotate them so that the wolves don't become habituated and lose their fear of any one particular tool.
It takes extra time, labor, and materials to use non-lethal control methods, i.e., more money than a typical family ranch operation has in their budget.
The ranch family spends all summer irrigating and cutting and putting up hay to feed the animals all winter, and they don't have room in their budget to hire 2 or 3 horseback riders to spend all day and all night herding the cattle and moving fences, building corrals.
Nearly all Idaho sheep ranchers are now buying extra guard dogs to protect sheep from coyotes and wolves, but sometimes wolves kill guard dogs. 3 guard dogs were confirmed kills in the last year. Some cattle ranchers also use extra range riders to try to protect their livestock. The difficulty is that range riders are often in short supply. It's a unique skill set. Sometimes they're impossible to find. The non-lethal methods are experimental ways to ward off predators and wolves. Wolf population objectives were set in the 2002 Idaho Wolf Management Plan as approved by the Idaho legislature. The plan calls for exceeding a population of at least 150 wolves to ensure that they don't fall back on the endangered species list. Idaho has an estimated minimum population of at least 800 to 1,000 wolves at the present time, according to Idaho Fish and Game. To save money, Idaho Fish and Game has been transitioning to a system of estimating wolf populations via remote cameras in documented wolf territories. Previously, they used radio collars to track wolf populations to provide more detailed estimates.
What we're looking primarily at is looking at how much area is occupied by wolves and how that changes over time. And so what we have is a grid system set up across the state. Each cell is about roughly the size of a wolf territory.
About 220 remote cameras gather photo data through the summer months, and then Idaho Fish and Game staff analyzes the photo data, plus DNA data collected from wolf harvest to determine wolf populations.
This stuff is all put together, run through the models, and it gives us a real good handle on the amount of area occupied by wolves in the state of Idaho.
We're moving to different population estimators. One of the criticisms that we don't know how many wolves are out there, that's true, we don't. But we're trying new methods that don't cost sportsmen and the people of the state as much money.
It's scary to some rural residents that wolves are killing animals so close to their homes and communities. Vila and Jack Thomason lost 2 pet goats to wolves in October 2018. One was confirmed Sweet Pea. The Thomason Ranch is right next to U.S. Highway 95, north of Cambridge. Sweet Pea was killed in the dark of night, sleeping with the sheep.
She was out with the sheep, like always, and the wolf got him that night. Ate her up to the collar, and we had the trapper come in and they confirmed the kill. It feels horrible. It feels really horrible, especially where they're getting these wolves pushed on us and we didn't ask for them.
2 llamas were killed at Marilyn Johnson's ranch near Kamei. She could hear the animals being killed by the barn in the middle of the night. Robin Brown is a professional dog trainer owner of Broken Circle Border Collies in Indian Valley. She raises border collies to sell to ranchers for herding sheep and cattle. On a beautiful summer day, Brown was out riding horseback with her border collies in the national forest. Wolves are very territorial, and Great Pyrenees guard dogs, border collies, and hounds are particularly vulnerable in the forest. One day, one of her border collies disappeared right under her nose.
She was the last genetic, maternal gene line that I had to the best dogs I've ever had. I went up there on my horse for a whole week trying to find that dog. The 5th or 6th day up there, I was alone. I always pack a gun with me. We always do up there, but I came into a little bit of a kind of opening meadow, and I see a lot of grass laid down, and then I found my dog. And got off my horse. She was laid out. I saw a lot of wolf hair, a lot of wolf sign. I could see where they urinated on the dog, where they licked her. She had no pads on her feet. All her pads were down to meat. I put her on my horse, tied her on my horse, and just got the most horrible feeling carrying her out on my horse back to the trailer. It was horrible.
Brown called the local trapper from USDA APHIS Wildlife Services to see if he could confirm the kill. He skinned the dog and confirmed it was a wolf.
He showed me the dog, and what it looked like to me was that someone skinned my dog, chopped it all up, crushed it into parts and pieces, crushed bones, muscle, tissue, meat, and then sewed the dog up in its normal body. So in that way, I was glad that I saw what the wolves could do. They killed my dog by crushing her hips, her back legs, her ribs. The crushing was so severe and intense that it actually tore the meat up inside her without puncturing the skin at all.
Brown was emotional, but mostly she was mad.
Yeah, you had to change your whole life to change our life because of the wolves. And to me, they're that scary creature that's in the nursery rhymes that pose themselves as the grandmother. They're a horrible creature. People have got to know the ugly truth about them. You know, it's not like you're hiking and want to see the beautiful wolf roaming out in the forest. They have done so much damage
One of the challenges with managing wolves in Idaho today is that it's a dynamic situation. Wolf populations follow their main food source, primarily elk and deer populations, and the locations can shift over time. After wolves were reintroduced in the central Idaho wilderness areas, wolves consumed large quantities of elk during the first 10 to 15 years of living in Idaho. Once that food source was diminished, wolf numbers increased in the forests and ranching country outside of the wilderness, where they are finding plenty of elk and sometimes livestock to eat.
It does look like we drove the elk out of the backcountry, but that's really not the case. It is just those populations that are back there haven't expanded, whereas the front country elk populations have expanded.
Idaho Fish and Game elk population maps help explain the dynamic. The areas shown in yellow indicate areas in central Idaho where bull and cow elk population objectives are not being met. The reduction of elk numbers in the Frank Church Wilderness and in the Loch Saw River country has had a tough impact on hunting outfitters. Those areas used to be one of the most prized areas to hunt elk in North America.
At one time, prior to reintroduction, outfitters were taking nearly 4,900 clients, hunting clients, and by 2009 that had reduced to about 1,200. So the small Idaho hunting businesses that are connected to the Idaho rural economy, this has been a detrimental factor.
Yeah, both the resident and non-resident hunters in Idaho have really struggled. We're confined to geographical areas. We can only hunt in certain units for certain species, and wolves don't operate that way. They don't know borders, they don't know territories. We've seen a lot of problems, especially in the northern and north central parts of the state. Just been a real struggle.
In North Idaho, the Foundation for Wildlife Management, based in Sandpoint, has been trying to reduce wolf numbers to improve elk and moose hunting. The group is concerned that existing levels of hunting and trapping are not working well enough to keep wolf numbers down.
We have a problem, and our elk and moose are suffering horribly. We need to do something now to make a difference.
Active wolf hunters and trappers also say that wolves are getting smarter every year, and they are getting harder and harder to hunt and trap.
They are very, very intelligent, extraordinarily wary, and if you don't do everything right, you can just forget it. You're not going to catch them.
Wolf pelts also don't offer much incentive for trappers because they often have flaws and aren't worth much money, Williams says.
For a really top quality, just the raw pelt, you could probably get $500 for it. Some of them are virtually worthless. The ones that have lost a lot of hair due to mange and lice. And that is probably the majority of the wolves we catch now have problems with that.
Given the challenge, the Foundation for Wildlife Management offers a cash reimbursement program to incentivize hunters and trappers to pursue wolves. The foundation offers cash reimbursements ranging from $250 to $1,000 for a successful harvest of wolves via hunting or trapping during regulated seasons. They are targeting specific hunting units where elk numbers are below management objective. The Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has contributed $25,000 a year to the program, and Idaho Fish and Game Commission contributed more than $30,000.
The driving factor for me is I have a 15-year-old son who's starting to show interest in hunting, and he deserves to get to hear elk bugle the way I have in my life.
Webb says he would like to work together with livestock groups to perhaps target fish and game units where wolf predation is high, such as in 8 counties with chronic wolf predation. Existing hunting and trapping efforts are not having success in those areas. The Idaho legislature augments funding for USDA Wildlife Services to help the agency's professional trappers work on instances of direct wolf predation on private and public lands. Those funds come through the Idaho Wolf Depredation Control Board. Ranchers and Idaho sportsmen contribute an equal share to the fund each year.
I thought it was a very beautiful thing that came together, and I know that Governor Otter felt the same, that this was the proper use of government to find that sharing of responsibility with the livestock industry, with the sportsmen, and with the general fund that held some of the responsibility for this wildlife that now is Idaho's responsibility.
Idaho Fish and Game hopes to prevent wolves from colonizing south of I-84, Moore says. The agency may use more liberalized hunting and trapping season in response to the record number of wolf kills.
We don't know everything yet. This is a grand experiment. If you look at what the original 95 plan called for, those best scientists on the ground projected that we would only have a couple of hundred wolves and that they would only exist in Yellowstone Park and in the Frank Church and backcountry wilderness areas. This so far exceeded, and we had that done within 6 or 7 years. And we've exceeded that. And so since that time, everything we put on paper in 95 was sort of out the window, and we've been chasing this ever since.
I think Idaho's done a very good job being proactive, but we've also seen a very drastic expansion of wolves, and so as that happens, the plans have to change, the plans have to be updated, and new resources and tactics have to be used to try to fix that population.
We just have too many wolves. The sportsmen, the cattlemen, the livestock producers, the farmers, they're all on the same page that Idaho needs to reduce this wolf population because we're at kind of a critical stage.
Linnea Elzinga rides and sleeps with her family's cattle all summer long to protect them from wolves.
I think they're beautiful animals. I think that we can coexist with them. I think that, yeah, a lot of times people really hate having them because of the damages they do to the cattle and the effects of that, but I think there is a way to coexist with them.
Robin Brown moved the base of her operations for Broken Circle border collies away from the mountains next to US 95 near Council to avoid wolves. And then her neighbors, the Thomasons, lost their pet goats nearby.
I don't want them anywhere around me. They've changed my business. They're all over the place. Something has to be done.